All right. Hello, everyone. Thank you for joining us today. This is episode 2 of A Renewed Hope for Digital Assets, produced by AI MINDSystems Foundation. I'm your friendly host, Heather Lee Flannery, co-founder and chief executive officer at AI MINDSystems Foundation. Delighted that you've been able to make it today. We've got some exciting announcements to unpack, and I can't wait to introduce our esteemed panelists. Before we proceed with that, just some quick housekeeping matters. You are automatically on listen-only mode, so you don't need to worry about muting. We will be reserving 10 to 15 minutes at the end of the panel discussion for audience Q&A. Please note the Q&A dialog box below in Zoom. Please enter your questions at any point during the event, and we'll make a best effort basis to address as many questions as possible, either during the event or potentially in follow-up if needed. During the Q&A session, we will be reading your questions or paraphrasing and directing your questions to the panel. So with that, I'm excited to get started. Let's do quick intros of our panelists, and we will be unpacking these themes further when we start the panel. Let's begin with my esteemed co-founder and our Chief Scientific Officer, Dr. Sean Mannion. Over to you, Sean.
Thank you, Heather. Hello, everyone. I'm Sean Mannion. I am the Chief Scientific Officer and co-founder at AI MINDSystems Foundation. I'm a neuroscientist by training. I spent a lot of time after my postdoc doing research policy and research administration in the federal government, and found blockchain technology and realized it was a solution for a lot of things that ailed us, but at the same time needed a different approach than many other industries. So since 2017, I've been working in blockchain with Heather and others, bringing that to healthcare and life sciences. I got to co-author a book, Blockchain for Medical Research. It was published in 2020, and we're working on a second edition now with the renewal of Decentralized Science, or DeSci, which has been coming back since last year after a bit of a hiatus during COVID. And I'm also a co-editor at Frontiers in Systems Biology section, Systems, Concepts, Theories, and Policy in Biology and Medicine. Great to be here.
Thank you, Sean. Always great to have discussions with you. Next, let's move to our Chief Financial Officer, Stacey Ferris. Over to you, Stacey.
Hi, thanks, Heather. My name is Stacey Ferris. I'm a certified public accountant in Virginia and a certified fraud examiner, about over a decade of experience in forensic accounting litigation work. These days, though, I spend my time in the classroom at Virginia Tech, where I teach primarily accounting analytics, and we're looking at how we implement AI education around how to use AI tools and so forth in the classroom and perform better analytics. So I'm working with AI MINDSystems to help them innovate around some of these new financial, let's say, instruments that will just be a natural result, a natural result of innovating in NFTs and the digital asset space. I've been working in the digital asset space for many years, published articles on a digital asset taxonomy. I've developed a lot of educational courses about how to account for crypto assets. So this is an area I'm very passionate about and very excited to be working with Heather and Sean and this fantastic team.
Thanks so much, Stacey. And next, I'd like to introduce AI MINDSystems Foundation newest partnership that we're going to be unpacking during this event a little bit further, Genobank, and Genobank's founder and CEO, Daniel Uribe. Over to you.
Thank you very much, Heather. It's a pleasure and honor to be here this morning. Hello, everybody. My name is Daniel Uribe. I am the CEO and co-founder of Genobank. My journey also began around 2017. I was already working in the blockchain space, specifically in the remittances space, like very fintech oriented. But in that year, my youngest was diagnosed with a rare disease. It is called Glanzmann thrombosthenia. He's doing well, thank God. But our case inspired me to go into genomics. more specifically into genomics data management. So in 2018, we came up with the idea of, which is the core of our technology, to establish the ownership and control over human biosamples using the NFTs, basically the ERC 721 standard. And since then, we have named those biosample NFTs or bio NFTs. And today we are very honored that we are joining forces with AI Minds to be part of these data trust networks and wisdom networks. And we will be talking a little bit more about this in a couple of minutes. So I'm very honored, very happy. Thank you for being, I'm very grateful for being here.
Thank you so much, Daniel. And we're thrilled to be kicking off this strategic relationship with you. And I've been wanting to work with you for many years. It's finally our time. So very excited about that. And audience, I just placed a press release in the chat. This is the release regarding our partnership for your perusal. And last but not least, I have breaking news about AI MINDSystems Foundation's team and strategy. Let me please introduce Rebecca Kontosik. As of right now, Rebecca Kontosik is our worldwide general manager for Web3 strategy and operations. I'm excited to have you unpack your background and role a little bit. Rebecca, over to you.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me part of the team. I'm definitely very excited and inspired by all of the work, and as well as the pedigree and the experience that the team has. It's something that you don't see often in crypto, such experienced individuals coming together to work on such global important problems. So a bit about myself. I've been in crypto for about a decade now, personally, and professionally, more seriously in the last 5 years, done a lot of consulting and advising, bringing traditional projects into Web3, teaching them about why crypto is important, why blockchain matters, why this matters for the future and the way that the world is going. I also have a deep-rooted background in investor relations and the venture capital side, specifically from a crypto lens. So as head of investments right now, I bring projects into our ecosystem, help them with fundraising and different strategies in this sense. And then also just from a personal standpoint, I'm very much in the trenches on a daily basis in crypto from the community side. So I'm honored and excited to bring that crypto native lens into the amazing work that we're doing here. And it was really what inspired and motivated me to join the team, is that it's the right team to be tackling such an important problem. And it's also the right time for crypto, not only as an industry to be ready for such innovation and such products, but also for the wider community and user base to be able to receive this really positively. So a lot to dive into, very excited and very honored to be here.
Thank you so much, Rebecca, and welcome aboard. We're thrilled to have you. To start off, what we'd like to do is have just Daniel and I speak for a few minutes to orient the audience to our new partnership. And then I'll ask you as panelists to turn your webcams back on, and the panel discussion will ensue from that orientation. Sound good? Okay. So Daniel, what are some of your preliminary thoughts about the things that we're going to be able to do together that we wouldn't be able to do separately? And maybe you could use that to add a little bit more context to what you've accomplished at Genobank, which is remarkable.
I appreciate, Heather, and thank you very much for the opportunity. So as a context, that as you were mentioning, I would love to just bring very quickly three, I think, important aspects for this webinar particularly. So it's basically, the first one is we already know that, or at least for me, it's very clear that we are in front of the most crypto-friendlier government that the United States have ever had. So that's really the greatest ecosystem that we could wish for, because now we have even a crypto president, right? We could discuss many things about politics, but in this particular, I think it's very favorable. In the other hand, we have like a couple of use or cases that have been like very important in the ecosystems. I'm referring to the 23andMe hack and the Nebula Genomics kind of class action suit, which basically are in terms of data management, right? Those good companies, but somehow they misplaced data or they didn't handle it appropriately, and it hurt them and it hurt their customers. And we call this like the centralized models. And the third one, I think the most important one, is what is the inspiration or the counter narrative, which is DeSci. We are in the dawn of decentralized science as we know it, and we've been pioneering even if before the term existed in 2021. Nevertheless, I think all of this is kind of the context. And just like an additional context, very quickly for people who is hearing about bio NFTs or biosample NFTs, is basically how you can use blockchain technology to register one of these, right? So I think most people will be familiar. This is a swab kit, right? It was used in COVID-19 to have a sample of your DNA or whatever, and then how you combine it with a cryptographic key. I mean, this is just one form of a cryptographic key. Actually, it's inside the chip, and this is an NFC card where you can cryptographically sign transactions. So it's how you combine the two with a third party, let's say a sequencing laboratory, to establish a NFT, which will serve basically as the token that will represent the relationship among all the stakeholders around this important asset. And then obviously it involves the data around it, and that's basically our primitive that we bring to DeSci and to the Wisdom networks today, thanks to you, Heather.
Thanks, Daniel. One of the things that I wanted to unpack a little bit is all of these points of unification between AI MINDSystems Foundation's mission, vision, values, strategy, and the role that bio NFTs and Genobank can contribute in that model. For those of you that are familiar with our work or listen to episode 1 of this series, this is episode 2. We unpacked a vision for data sovereignty of the individual, being able to use that self-sovereign data to train AI models and AI agents that are completely trustworthy and can operate without any conflict of interest with the person, allowing an individual to interact in a massively digital AI agent-driven economy with reasonable technological parity with corporations and governments. And it's a very ambitious vision, but one of the main themes is that it's about multiple data modalities. If you wish to drive precision health and you wish to drive precise outcomes, it's not about enormous data sets that could get you statistical aggregates. It's about you and your family and your community. And the way that needs to happen is many different data domains, types of data being brought under the custody and direct control with full privacy preservation of the individual data subject, patients, people, us, we the people. And what can be brought to bear by having biosamples become reusable research assets, reusable precision health assets, while retaining all of the privacy, agency, sovereignty, and dignity of the person, is unbelievably profound. In a moment when we activate the panel, I think I'm going to ask Dr. Mannion and you, Daniel, to unpack a scenario that a vision for what can happen in, for example, oncology research or research into precision oncolytics. as an important for instance. So this partnership allows us to bring in specifically biosamples as data domains with really important technological wrappers around how those are created, stored, and used, as well as the network of laboratories and the collection kits that can facilitate something really profound, which is end-to-end privacy preservation, end-to-end visibility of who has your biosamples, how exactly were they created, even what piece of equipment was used in processing. So Daniel, I'll invite you. Oh, one last comment. We have a very aligned use from a digital assets perspective of story protocol, where both of us are anchoring our IP strategies in leveraging story protocol. So maybe just last opportunity for quick comments on that, and we will then begin the panel.
Of course. So very quickly, I think the protocol that you're mentioning we call it a third generation L1 blockchain, meaning that it has like first generation would be Bitcoin, very simple but very powerful, been working for almost 13 years or more, and that's very, very simple. The version 2 or the second generation could be Ethereum, which was more like a decentralized computer, right? That would be fed using their own token. But now a third generation would be the combination of the two, which is a virtual machine. But now it becomes clear that is just for the niche of IP. So we needed, I think now we have one very, very high quality one, which is Story IP protocol, to be the GitHub for IP, or the global international register for IP, not only to make claims about IP, but also to make it liquid. And I think most of this webinar would be how we make this bio IP liquid and protect all the stakeholders, and like get into the speed that we need, as you mentioned, in this new AI or agentic digital economy that we're already in.
Mm-hmm. Thank you, Daniel. And AI MINDSystems Foundation has adopted a broadly multi-chain strategy. And this alignment point between Genobank and AI MINDSystems Foundation also has an overlap in Avalanche.
Yeah.
And Wisdom Networks, for example, will be Avalanche running on Avalanche subnets. So we've got those two protocol alignments. And it's exciting times for what we're going to be able to do working with those communities as well. So with that, I'm going to invite our esteemed panelists to turn their cameras back on. And thanks for coming back on. Sean, I'd like to direct the first question to you about the importance and significance of being able to reuse data that was captured in a research context, or use, for example, precision health data assets in research. What is your point of view on what could be unlocked in the field of science if we were able to better handle those matters? Over to you.
I think that's a huge topic, and I think what Daniel, what you have done has been part of an ecosystem that's been building for quite some time. And as you said, decentralized science is kind of coming back around. DeSci, when I worked in the federal government, there was a lot of emphasis, and I think that emphasis is about to come back in a big way about getting more bang for your buck out of research. And research data is higher quality. It's grade A compared to clinical data or compared to self-report data. And so getting that data, which has been oftentimes collected just for one study, utilized in many different capacities. Sometimes I've known veterans who've had problems getting their data out of one VA study to share with another study. In this case, particularly, it was genetic data, and we've got a solution at hand. Figuring out the right business processes, the right workflows is going to be key. But we spent years in DoD working with VA, working with NINDS for a traumatic brain injury, what's now called FIT for Federal Interagency Traumatic Brain Injury Research Informatics System, which was meant to be a centralized repository of data sharing across multiple studies with second generation and third generation researchers using that data. The effort was more than a decade long. It was tens of millions of dollars. It's still in place, but it is underperformed for what people wanted to do, because it's really behind a firewall. What we can do with a decentralized approach, with the patient in control of giving access to their data and being remunerated for that data in appropriate ways, is to allow data to be much more actively available. And that's what this ecosystem and the partners is meant to do, is have this same goal that's been around for more than 15 years within the federal government, of sharing data, of data being available for more research, more finding, more precision medicine, and making that available to all people at all times, with the patients themselves benefiting, not just in the end goal 10 to 15 years later in health outcomes, but with more immediate feedback informationally for precision medicine and monetarily to incentivize them. So I think it's a golden moment for this type of ecosystem to build and thrive.
Thanks, Sean. Daniel, in a second, I would love for you to unpack briefly the Henrietta Lacks case and what new generations of patients contributing to what, Sean, you call faster miracles, could happen for families that are similarly affected today. And then following that, I'd love to get your thoughts, Stacy, on the financial sustainability and growth implications of making data itself a fully financialized asset class. And what are some of the things that we're working on that are anchored in not only digital assets accounting, but data valuation as another critical path. And Rebecca, after that, I have some more thoughts for you that I'm hoping to bring forward. Daniel, for the audience who doesn't know anything about Henrietta Lacks, who was she? Why does she matter as an example, and what could be different now?
Thank you very much, and hopefully I can speak in the same level of respect that she deserves. I'll try to do that, because I think she is the ambassador of why is the spirit, or what is the mission of biosample NFTs. It's embedded. Actually, if we could, we would have named them on her honor, like Henrietta Lacks or Lacks NFTs, because that's really what the problem that solves, which is basically equitable tracing. In legal terms, the NFTs solve that in the digital asset or the real world asset that they are linked to, right? We call them also real world assets. In this case, Mrs. Henrietta Lacks, unfortunately, she died of cervical cancer, if I remember well. But the problem or the conflict is that researchers in Johns Hopkins Hospital back in those days, we're talking about 1931 or something like that, they used her tissue to, yes, contribute to science, but without asking for her consent or any relative consent. So the family was also affected. It's been decades of litigation and conflict. I think, as far as I know, in 2024, they reach some kind of agreement, or I don't know if call it settlement. I'm not an IP lawyer, like Stacy could have helped us a little bit more. But here's the main issue is that Henrietta Lacks cells were called HeLa cells. Now it's a product. You can order HeLa cells online today. I think it's $2,000 per microliter or something like that. And again, it's a product, and there was not a system to do exactly the equitable tracing needed to try to map what corresponds to who, and be, as you were saying, Heather, in a conflict-free ecosystem. I think we come from the opposite. There is a lot of conflict of donors of biosamples. We don't know what to report to them, when to report to them, how to give their data back, as Sean was mentioning, is like veterans struggling to get their own data out of a system. And so it's practically a chaos, right? It's a right chaos. There's no order, and without order, very little progress can be made. So again, just the HeLa cells case is the perfect, let's say, problem to get in love with, because if you get inspired, and we center in how we could solve, because in essence, we all are Mrs. Henrietta Lacks every time we give a biosample to a laboratory or to a company or whatever. We want to know what they are doing with our biospecimen, what data was derived from it. I want to claim rights over those, and then have agency. And I live with this word, which is, I think, the most important one. We want agency, and as well, we want companies to consider our data, why not, in an agreement, part of their digital assets, where I think is where Stacy can help us to understand a little bit more how we can have financial statements with data liabilities now, or data asset liabilities now. Back to you, Heather, but I think it's fascinating how this is exactly, or the description of the problem we're trying to solve. Yeah.
Thanks so much, Daniel, for unpacking that. And I know we're going to circle back, I'm sure. Sean actually has a conflict at the half hour. So Sean, this is an opportunity for final remarks from you, and then we will continue on with the panel.
I think it's to reiterate some of the things I've been saying. It's a prime time with what's going on in research funding, disrupting a lot of the research environment, to look at some of these emerging technologies that have been around for a decade and find ways to apply them to both save science, to accelerate science, and to improve science overall. At the same time, considering the cost of science and keeping that cost down, but also distributing that cost, as Daniel was saying, to those who are involved in their skin in the game, quite literally. And so I think it's the moment that we need these new approaches, and I think that is what we're trying to do with this ecosystem. So I think it's very timely. Thank you all. I'll let the conversation continue, and I'll catch you next time.
Thanks, Sean. One of the things that Dr. Mannion says often is that we are working toward better science, cheaper research, and faster miracles. And it's a wonderful encapsulation of our potential as an ecosystem and in our partnership. So Stacy, I wanted to get your thoughts on the implications of financializing data as an asset class, both for individual people and enterprises. What are some of the thoughts that you could share in what it's going to take to see this happen at real scale?
So the first thing we have to establish is that there is no GAAP standard. There is no accounting standard for how do you value data and put it on your balance sheet, right? So balance sheets for, say, entirely, online companies that only deal in data really aren't showing you the complete picture of that particular operation, particularly when data is their biggest asset, right? And there's a lot of reasons why we haven't had an accounting standard for that. It's like, well, different data is worth different things to different people. You have the shelf life of data. You've got all sorts of complications from an accounting perspective. And so generally, we've just kind of stayed away from it and said, well, we know it's an asset, but we're just not going to assign a value to it, right? Or if we have to value data reserves in, say, like a business valuation, we might use things like the cost to produce this data or other inputs to try to figure out an approximate value for it. But by and large, we just omit it from financial records and financial statements, right? Well, as we move into this new economy where so much stuff is being done by AI agents, where we have a data economy, we really can't continue to be in this state of there's no accounting standard for data. That has to change. Either we can change it, so that's really what we're trying to do, is figure out how can we start to like innovate or put out some thought leadership to help to influence the process, or at least get it to people's attention of, hey, this is something we should pay attention to, because we've got a massive asset class here that's just getting completely ignored. Here's the interesting thing about crypto. Okay, NFTs have started to create a data market. What's interesting is that the most recent FASB standard for crypto assets specifically omits NFTs. And you might say, well, why does it omit NFTs, right? Well, because most people say, oh, well, there's a market for NFTs, right? So I can get a price for it. So why wouldn't I put that on my balance sheet? And we have a lot of crypto subledgers that have been taking NFTs and they simply put it into the financial records at the price that it was purchased, right? Or offered for sale. And they just stop there, which is not really the best way to account for NFTs, not for all of them. One of the challenges of NFTs is that a lot of NFTs are assigning a price, not to you got real world NFTs. So actually, let me back up a second. When I think about NFTs, I think about my taxonomy and the 4 types of NFTs, of ownership NFTs. There's 5 really: authentication. There's 4 subtypes of ownership NFTs. Within that category, there's single use. You buy it once, you use it, it's gone. Or like a POAP, it doesn't really have a lot of value for you. You've got reusable NFTs, which is where a lot of your IP stuff is going to fall. It's going to land in this reusable category where there's royalties attached, there's other benefits attached, but we're really talking about data underneath that, right? And so in that reusable category, we've already started to create a market for data, because a picture, a JPEG, is a type of data, right? It's a type of data file. And so we've already started to create this market around that. Why has the FASB not produced a standard around it? Because producing a standard or guidance for NFTs is effectively telling people how to value data. That's why they've stayed away from it. It is just historically this area of, gray, kind of nobody really knows, right? So if we're going to move into a future where crypto and blockchain is getting used a lot, and you're purchasing crypto or digital assets that are on chain, you're doing that with other crypto assets, long and short of it is you got to have a standard for data valuation. And so that's where we're trying to innovate there. And starting with that framework of the taxonomy will help. So our IP NFTs, they'll fall in that reusable category. We can look at the core value and then the royalties that come from that. Perpetuals are really about online real estate, and then real asset NFTs are when you have a real asset and you're tracking it on a blockchain, and you are doing purchases of it. There is some kind of monetary transaction happening with that NFT. So those are easy to value very often because you can assign a value to a real item in the world. We would use probably traditional frameworks or standards for how do you value or price biosamples and stuff like that. But when it comes down to something that's purely data, like maybe my DNA code or my genetics or test results, that's going to be one of those interesting new types of assets where it's like, well, is it a real asset NFT? Is it a reusable NFT? And then we have to look at things like, how long does this type of data last? How is it getting reused? Who owns it? Who receives the benefit from its sales back and forth? So it's a challenge. It's a big challenge. I'm sure we're not the only people thinking about this, but we're among a minority of people thinking about it, and that's something that we really want to change by bringing this into the spotlight and getting more attention on it. That's how we're going to drive a new standard and really the framework for a new economy.
Thank you so much, Stacy. Absolutely spot on. I'd love to just build on that a little bit about what's needed. One of the challenges in valuation is that the data economy, with the exception of the tiny piece of it that's happening in NFTs today, is opaque. It's off market. There is no price discovery. So if you think about just fundamental economics, if you don't have price discovery, you can't make a market. And so one of the additional things that AI MINDSystems Foundation is working on, the accounting standards for data valuation are critical. So is the market making for a broader data economy. For example, just in healthcare and life sciences alone, we sized today's data economy, this is 2023 figures, at $66.56 billion per annum. In three segments of the market. 0% of that has accrued to any data subject. And that is all health data we're talking about. So it's almost entirely data with a human subject.
Well, that's something that really inspires me, and it was part of the reason why I wanted to be part of the team was, I'm a millennial, and I've grown up in this era of your data is getting stolen, it's getting used, it's getting exploited, you don't have control over it. Like, I'm one of the millennials who I was one of the first people on Facebook, and I also left it about 6 years ago and just pulled all my data off because I was like, I really don't like that you're using my data and trying to profile me and market to me, and I don't get any say in that, right? And so I am wildly passionate for this idea of let's break the data broker model. Let's put people's data and the compensation for it back in their hands. It's a wildly complex problem. Honestly, I don't know how you're going to do it. I don't know how we're going to do it, but we have to try. It's got to be broken. It's been detrimental to trust in our society, to so many things. But if we're moving forward into a future where everybody's connected, you have to have control of your data. Okay, I'm done.
Thank you, Stacy. We're blessed to have your passion at the helm of these finance and accounting leadership functions that we're seeking to provide. So I'm curious what you think about this, Rebecca. I know that one of your personal passions is about the optimization of humans, the ultimate best interests of humanity and their well-being. What do you see, as a financial and investment professional, but also to the idea of not only preventing and curing disease, but achieving continuing development of what it means to be a human being and how we can be optimized?
Yeah, no, I definitely have so many deep passions about this topic and can relate a lot to everything that everyone is speaking about here. Stacy definitely nailed on the head with everything that you just mentioned. It's something that is almost unfathomable to think about, that we don't have ownership over our data or information, and that this is allowed to go on. And the way that I see it is, if we get DeSci right, if we get data sovereignty right, the next generation of medical breakthroughs, data ownership, AI research, innovation, it really should be owned and have control by communities and by users, and kind of demystifying DeSci as this ivory tower, or these big pharma or big tech companies having full ownership and control. It really brings the ownership back into the hands of the everyday user, not just by corporations anymore. So it's very exciting to see that that unfold. I do kind of see that future of even funding coming through a more community centric spot. Oh, sorry. Yes, so funding coming from a community focused area. It's something that is very exciting from a crypto standpoint, and that we've seen in the era of NFTs, and almost from the ashes of the 2021 cycle. What we saw from that is the power of community and also the power of community raising. And now we're seeing it in a new cycle at the moment with meme coins. There are a lot of examples of good and bad use cases of token launches and the benefits that they can do. One, just to highlight off an example off top of my head, is called the Mira token, which is the father that raised 14 million off a meme coin campaign to support research for his daughter's brain tumor. And that is something that 10 years ago probably could have never happened, to be able to rally users in an online forum, raise funds, and actually have something come out of it. And so that is, I expect to see more. And even from a VC standpoint, flipping the traditional model, having less institutional funding, more community, and be able to really do so much benefits with it. And to the point of digital assets, I'm excited that almost the hype cycle is over, and that NFTs have almost had its roller coaster, because now it's really showing that digital assets are infrastructure, their identity, their governance potential, their IP rights. There's so much beyond just the JPEG and the trigger warning of the NFT that came in previous cycles. And in every point of history, every major shift in technology has always created new asset classes. And I've always seen digital assets to Web3 as what stocks have been to corporations. They're fundamental, they're valuable, they're here to stay, and they're going to bring in a whole new wave of ownership and community involvement. So so many thoughts to unpack, but very, very excited about where everything is going. And I love what was mentioned about contributing to faster miracles, better science, and cheaper resources. That to me is such an encompassment of what DeSci ought to be, and what it feels like we're moving towards. So it's very exciting.
Thanks, Rebecca. So let's turn the conversation to, so we've kind of been unpacking the dependencies of a fair, inclusive new data economy, and data valuation was discussed. Market architecture for fully financialized data as an asset class is another area that we're working in related to that. Let's talk about the implications of intellectual property and its protection, its registration, its protection, and the revenue models for data custodians, individual people, and in an inclusive model, enterprise custodians of human-centered data. I'd love to get, you've been thinking very deeply about this, as have I, Daniel. I'd love to get your thoughts on, you've been working on Genobank for a long time. The implications of moving all of the technical and scientific capabilities to be paired with enforceable, traceable IP in a global framework, for all IP use cases. Tell us a little bit about your evolution that got you to that choice and the implications for bio NFTs from an IP perspective.
Thank you. I think this is the core kind of problem we're still dealing with. So the good thing, or the good news, is that now the narrative is in place, like people understands the importance, right? Because back in 2018, the narrative was, I just participated in 23andMe, I trust them, nothing bad is going to happen to my data, I don't care if they make money on my data. That was kind of the issue. Then 2021, NFTs goes up, like they started saying, okay, NFT is a JPEG. I said, no, it's the rights over a JPEG in on-chain. And so people start like understanding it and say, okay, but why, how a biosample is an NFT? It's not a picture, because it was like really, really linked. Like, hey, an NFT must have a JPEG, right? They were very linked. They said, no, this is a data NFT, and it's the same. It's like rights, it's on-chain rights for a specific data set. And if you double click that in the genomic space, is your most important and sensitive data set in the digital world is your DNA, because it involves also your family. It's your 50% your mom, 50% your father, and so on and so on. So because DNA is the blockchain of nature, right? So everybody's traceable in the blockchain of nature, strictly talking. So now the narrative, because they back in 2021, let's say, okay, let's say we already have the register. Let's say already everybody knows how to use NFTs and understand NFTs. People will not have time to manage their personal digital data assets, which is true, I think. Yeah, I will not would like to spend like 1 hour like saying, oh, who is using my data and so on and so forth. So that was a narrative again for a while. What changed everything is the evolution of AI, and specifically talking the agents. Because now we're talking that in this agent to agent economy, we are working, and this is part of the framework that we have together with AI MINDSystems, is how can we build together an agent that will protect my rights while maximizing the interactions or reusability of my data in an ethical context. So I said like a verb, but it's again, let's leverage AI. So it could be a good data agent, right? For me, it'll have some permissions already by default, that if, let's say, the researcher is known, or the AI of that researcher can cryptographically sign the consent, basically, because now we're talking also about the liquidity of consents, then my agent will have like all the permissions. As today, we're seeing already cases where 2 AI agents were selling IP in Twitter. Like, you could see the negotiation, like, hey, this is an asset I'm interested on. The other AI will answer, okay, we can have a license. What about 50-50? They say, okay, yes. And they put the agreement on Story Protocol, on chain, the 2 agents. Like, that's the thing we want to see around here with my data. I said, okay, it's a net positive relationship with a researcher, my son's data, because everything in Genobank is inspired by this specific measure or threshold. Is, would I put my son's data there? Obviously, the data of my whole family is inside a Genobank. But again, back to the thing is that what are we seeing now? The narrative is almost 100% with AI, and if not, you may ask you just have to listen all the noise like from these top AI companies, which is all people is still asking, where did you got all the data sets to train your closed model? And that's still a question. And Rebecca just said the same, and Stacy she just pictured perfectly the world. Well, they don't necessarily have the incentives to recognize the value of the data, because then, as you said, Heather, the data subject will have to come into the equation, and we will have to honor that. And I don't know if paying or compensating or what would be the appropriate legal term, but just by putting the data subject into the network of accrual, like stakeholders, I don't know how to say, but the thing is, and that's exactly our mission. Not necessarily for compensation. That I think that's going to be a consequence, a natural consequence, but for agency. I think most importantly, I'll finish with this, for Genobank, the most important right is your right to consent, to authorize the use of information for node A, which I trust, not to node B, which I don't trust. Many people trust in OpenAI, other people trust in Anthropic. That's perfect. That's people's prerogative. Our system will only will empower that. Hey, I'll give consent to company A. I will not give consent to company B, period. And then, I don't know, personal issues will say, well, would you accept compensation? How we're going to value the data, as Stacy was saying, that's a very challenging thing. Just a special note, the only reference that I have, it's an EY, Ernst & Young study, where they put in average, clinical story, like the longitudinal history of a patient with its genomic map, was in 2023 valued in average in $6,900 per patient. That's kind of the average. Just that's a study that it's out there. I think it's kind of unique. I haven't been able to, and I'll post the and it was done in the UK. But anyhow, I think this is the thing, how we enable AI to AI ethical biodata exchange. I'll leave it with that.
Thanks, Daniel. And in our partnership between our organizations, the AI strategy that AI MINDSystems is bringing about also brings in socio-technical considerations for self-sovereign AI, self-sovereign digital twins, and a very radical perspective on advanced privacy preservation, such that AI models running in the person's own infrastructure are natively trained or fine-tuned and operated in a model that ensures there's zero conflict of interest between the individual person and any of the models that are being used by them for them in this context. And that's incredibly important and does not exist, at least not very seamlessly, for individual people today. That's a very, very important part of it. So I'd like to offer Stacy and Rebecca any last closing remarks, and then we're going to start audience Q&A. Stacy, any closing remarks?
Closing remarks, like the future is going to be a fun place. You know, we talk about like what happens to humans in a world that's dominated by AI, and we have all of these different agentic things happening. And people think about that in the current dichotomy that we have, and they think about it as something where they just get exploited. That's how people tend to view it. And that's, I think, part of the fear of, you know, what could the future bring? Well, it's these massive corporations. They're just going to find more ways to exploit me because I'm just a product to them. And I think, you know, one of our questions is talking about, says, what you're doing is not only the deployment of innovation, but the construction of a new culture. And that's absolutely right. We're basically saying, look, humans, people, individuals are not commodities. They have valuable information, and that person should control it. And they should have control of their own agents who can then negotiate on their behalf for their benefit.
For sure.
So yeah, it is creating a completely new way of thinking about how our society is organized and and particularly the value of the individual within that society, right? The value of the individual is owned by the individual, not some kind of resource for exploitation by massive corporations.
Thank you, Stacy.
Yeah.
And
some days I got it, you know, some days I'm on fire.
and, Rebecca, your closing remarks, and then we go to the Q&A.
Yeah, no, I love, Stacy, your perspective, and of course you as well, Daniel and Heather. And it is true that AI is almost seen as scary to the minds of a lot of people. And to be fair, so is crypto and so is blockchain. And these are all new, innovative procedures that is going to be reactive, and people are going to initially think that it is intimidating. And it's the same thing that happened with any forefront of new technology. And the internet was scary in 2000, and before that television was scary. And so it just is almost green flags and good signals that we're heading towards things that the world needs, because we're met with this initial fear of adoption. The last closing remark that I would say, and the most bullish sentiment that I have right now, is that there's no major top of mind DeSci project that exists on the market right now. I think any crypto native would agree with me. There's nothing that is really capturing that entire ecosystem, which means that there are so many solutions and so many opportunities. And for this to be the right team to tackle that, and as well the right partnerships that we're experiencing and the right timing. And Daniel, to your point, the world has never been more crypto friendly than it is today. And the US has a crypto friendly president, which 5 years ago I would have never expected would exist. And so these are the building blocks, and these are the steps for AI Mind Systems and Daniel, everything that the partnership is allowing with us to be able to be these top of mind DeSci players. So it's early, but that means that we're thinking of things in the right way, and we have, the best minds on AI minds. So very, very exciting times to go forward.
Thanks, Rebecca. And it is remarkable. I've been in the crypto space since 2016. There has never been a time when US jurisdiction was viable, especially not for these major transformative, complex kinds of initiatives that right now we're proceeding anchored in US jurisdiction with a global agenda, is just thrilling, absolutely thrilling. Okay, so audience, you've submitted some wonderful questions. We're going to let this go over just a little bit so we can address at least a couple of them. So first, Motiva Services asked a great question that Stacy quoted from a moment ago. The question ultimately is considering the role of education in individual people to understand these concepts, their potentials, their rights, all of this kind of thing. I'll take the first stab at that, and the answer is: are we prioritizing education? Absolutely, yes. AI MINDSystems Foundation is currently fundraising and accepting donations to support major educational campaigns that deal with a variety of things, including education on data rights for individuals, tech, digital literacy, the privacy literacy, and health literacy, and how to be a more empowered, engaged patient in their experiences in that role. And that includes custodians, caregivers, parents, etc. So those are all top priorities that are going to be unfolding out of the foundation, AI MINDSystems Foundation, while we are building ecosystem companies that share governance with the foundation to affect different pieces and parts of what we refer to as the AI MINDSystems trusted data ecosystem. So absolutely spot on. I'll close on that question by adding that we have the concept of taking the thinking of precision medicine and precision health and applying it to education. So instead of generic educational content that is mass produced and rolled out in a mass way, our unique approach to education involves an AI-driven engagement where we are learning what people currently understand. For example, someone might be a finance professional and have a very high degree of financial literacy and know not the first thing about how their own body works, or have very low technical literacy, for example. Another person might be a radical privacy advocate, but know nothing about their health. Or you could imagine any combination of these characteristics. Our precision education strategy will baseline and meet people where they are, and aid them in unique educational goals that are tuned to their own literacy levels, including general literacy in multiple languages. So those are just some highlights on that priority. Any quick remarks from the panel on the theme of education for people, families, and communities?
It happens gradually over time. And I mean, it's like, I never got educated on a smartphone. It was just a product that showed up, and then I was like, oh, this is cool. And so we started all using it, right? So I think a lot of this is for the vast majority of people, right, who will be in this ecosystem. They might not get a whole heck of a lot of education about it, but when you say, hey, you can control your data here and have a secondary income stream from deciding who purchases it, you're going to get people jumping in who may not understand the technical underpinnings. I mean, but there's so many different examples we can talk about tech that we use where it's like you don't have to understand exactly how it works. Like, I still can't tell you exactly how my combustion engine in my vehicle works. But I know it works. Every time I think about how the internet works and data and all that, it feels like magic to me. Even though I do understand a little more about how that works. So, I mean, the education piece is, for some people, it'll be critical. The people who are going to be involved in kind of making this, building the infrastructure. And I don't think it's just going to be AI mind systems. I think that the way you make this really a broad change is you get a lot of companies jumping in to help make this happen. And that's how we really, really supercharge the ecosystem. This is not about like, oh, AI Mind Systems needs to be the only company out there and have a monopoly on it. No, we want more people to get into this space because that's how we're going to build our markets. That's how we're going to build this new culture around it. Okay.
Thank you, Stacy. Remarks on that, Rebecca? Looks like
yeah. I just wanted to add too. I mean, crypto talks a lot about mass adoption and what that means and what that looks like. And at the end of the day, the average user should never need to even understand how the tech works. The same way you don't need to care about how your combustion engine works. And even if we pooled 100 people on the street right now, probably most couldn't even explain how the internet works. They just know I upload a picture to Instagram, it gets posted. They don't need to care about any of the aspects that happen in the back end. And so it's exciting to see technology move towards a user-focused and community-focused sentiment that they just need to understand, I have a problem, this is solving it, and the inner workings and the tech behind it become secondary, if not completely unimportant. And that's when you really get mass adoption and buy-in, is when you're just solving these core problems without being so tech heavy and having to expect that everybody is necessarily educated or even cares to be educated about how it works in the back end. Their education is in the benefit that is to them and the reason why their data matters. And it's something that is becoming more of an adamant problem. And it's the analogy is you will never download an app to skip a queue unless you're standing at the back of a really long queue. And so you almost need to feel that instant pressure and that immediacy that I need access over my data and I see why it matters. So that's where we're moving towards now, is people are really realizing on a global level that the data impact and their lack of control impacts their daily lives. So the steps and the groundwork are definitely coming towards mass adoption, which is great to see.
Thanks, Rebecca. Any quick comment on education as a theme, Daniel?
Oh, totally. I think that's one of my kind of most often comments on I try to do some forensics in many of the projects, because I think that many people is super enthusiastic, which is good. And as Rebecca was like, for instance, this example of the Mira token, right? This father, raising funds. Underneath, we need a lot of education, because to be super honest, if you look at the forensics of the token, the most benefited entities were two whales. They made like $8 million in profits out of this father looking for help, So it raised 14 million, but people might say, oh, it was all went to the father, and we are a better world. No, unfortunately, that was not the case. He was able to get the $1 million he wanted to give to the laboratory. That was good. But we talk about the education because we think, okay, the enemy or the antithesis is the enterprise in the centralized world. Well, in the crypto DeSci world is the whales, because they don't have any lock times. They can do whatever they want. They manipulate the market. They manipulate this type of good projects. And that's how the education is very important, is how you can go into the smart contract and verify what are the safe rails that it is offering, if there are any. And if they are not, well, just be careful, because your $1,000 donation will become nothing if a whale comes with $500,000 and takes away 95% of the voting rights if you are purchasing a voting token or voting rights token, right? Which is usually the case in DeSci. So again, education is central. Sometimes it's like policing this, because there's no authority today, and it's like commenting and doing this. So it's super important. And AI MINDsystems is perfectly, I mean, we want to learn a lot. You're in Washington, D.C., you're in the epicenter of where all the regulatory policies hopefully will get out. And we want to be part of it. We want to abide to them. We want to cooperate. We want to collaborate, because we don't want to see these type of cases like saying, okay, it was 14 millions, but it were for the anonymous whales, and all the liability stayed with the father, because now he's still going to respond if any complaints, because a lot of people also lost a lot of money. All the liability will stay with him, and I think that's not fair. But anyhow, that would be my take on education.
Thanks, Daniel. And for the transactions that are going to be running specifically through the AI MINDsystems trusted data ecosystem, there are all going to be all kinds of controls, transparency requirements, transaction specific disclosures, and indemnities, insurance instruments connected to transactions, lots of things that don't exist right now in general. So it's very, very important consumer protections implemented out of an industry self-regulatory and private sector led approach to that. So
yeah, I'll just tip in there. I'm a certified fraud examiner. So, I mentor a chapter of the ACFE, which is the Association of Certified Fraud Examiners, kind of the premier global institution for fraud prevention and investigation. So if we were to have something like, a whale that just disrupts our entire ecosystem, I would be deeply troubled by the presence of any kind of market manipulation or fraud within our ecosystem. So I appreciate that Heather has a very transparent mindset, that she's, part of the reason why, and on the, I can't disclose all of our back-end operations, but I can tell you that internal controls and having procedure and process and transparency is very important to her. It's important to me. This isn't about getting rich, at least not for me. It's about, building this new economy and these new standards and being part of that intellectual movement. So, we're aware that there's a lot of fraud out there, and we have to take steps to prevent it. We have to be very thoughtful about how we design our networks, how we deploy our tokens, especially our voting tokens, and how we design the control of the governance structures. So that's top of mind, especially right now as we're launching.
Thanks so much, Stacy. Yay. I agree. Okay, so we've got panelists. We've got 2 questions I want to have us do if we possibly can. We're going to need to keep our answers a little on the shorter side, so we can wrap up. The next question is about standards, where we're being asked by looks like Denise Campbell what standards are we developing, or what is our standard strategy for this? And I'm just going to take a quick answer at that one, so we can move on to the final question. Denise, we have a robust and deep standard strategy. It's early, however, so I wouldn't put any of our accomplishments in that lane as having been done. Rather, they are priorities and they are work streams that are going to be unfolding this year and in the coming years. At a technology level, we have three what will be IEEE PARs, or project authorization requests, that will harmonize many pre-existing standards that map to three macro functions in our ecosystem. One will map to a new kind of consumer product that doesn't exist in the world. So a standard to define that product so that our market entry is not monopolistic from the get-go, but we create an open standard that our competitors can enter and engage within this new data economy that we are creating. The second is around our wisdom networks and the ability to have an open standard defining what one of those are, also knowing that that utility space needs to be open and competitive. And so we're going to be creating a standard that can facilitate evidence-based policy, regulatory implications of adopting decentralized data and AI utilities under public-private partnerships, not only our own, but other entrants in the market that are willing to conform to that and be certified conformant to that same standard. And last but not least, we have a very particular secure multi-party compute that also involves verifiable compute and a range of other deep technical characteristics that is about what defines a trusted data flow, a multi-party trusted data flow. And it's up and down a stack technologically and intricate, and that is the third technological standard. On the financial side, Stacy has alluded to important work that's going to be going on, contributing to accounting standards development. And also our financialization of data as an asset class implicates the expansion of a futures market into data as an asset class, meaning that it will be possible in the future to procure data that does not yet exist, that is rigorously specified in many, many different dimensions, and will be sourced over time in fulfillment of first forwards instruments, which are not standards, but secondarily futures instruments, which very much are. Anything that has a futures instrument associated with it is fundamentally a financial strategy, a financial standard for transacting in a certain commodity class. So that is the another important dimension of our standards. We also are working on the blockchain maturity model, which is a standard put forth by the Government Blockchain Association, and seeking to continue to see that adopted at the blockchain and Web3 layers for ourselves and ultimately our ecosystem partners. One important contributor to human and cultural systems of trust built on computational systems of trust. And then harmonization across various standards bodies and their work is also important. So thank you for that excellent question, Denise. Really important part of our strategy. And our last and final question is from Clark Thompson. Clark asks, what does the panel see as the greatest benefit of the convergence of AI and digital assets for the emerging new data economy? So I think we can hit that at a high level. Daniel, you've mentioned this critical intersection of AI and agentic economies as an enablement. Would you like to make a quick remark on a finer point of the biggest implication in your opinion?
No, thank you. Very succinctly, I think is human digital dignity. That's it. Because if we don't put safeguards to AI, as Stacey, sorry, was saying, we will have then totalitarian AI, right? And we don't want that. We want our human rights to also be embedded into the AI systems to get the most out of it without being commoditized as just like AI users, right? So dignity, human rights.
Love it. Thank you so much. Rebecca, what say you at this the highest impact point in your view between AI and digital assets in our ecosystem?
I see the biggest impact being able to help with like consent as well. And so Daniel, to your point, like using AI in ways that couldn't empower us before and putting those safeguards in place to make sure that it doesn't increase the problems that we're already facing.
Totally agree.
Thanks, Rebecca. Stacey, any thoughts from you on maybe the role of AI in market architecture?
I think about time and the value of time and my time as a individual, and that, you know, I couldn't spend, I don't have the time of day, okay, to go out and figure out, here's my personal health data, who wants to buy it, okay, how much am I going to negotiate for? Like, I don't have time for that, you know? But what's cool about AI and digital assets is that it enables things that previously were not possible.
Yeah.
It enables us to actually have that kind of an economy. It enables me to have, you know, I can have 50 agents out there all negotiating on my behalf. I can have 100 agents in the future. Everyone can, which means suddenly there are places where there's value that previously we could not unlock, and now we can unlock it. And not just unlocking it just for like the profit of, you know, executive to get another yacht. Okay, that's not what I want to unlock this value for, but unlocking it as value for the individual to benefit. So that's the biggest benefit, in my opinion, is that we're unlocking tremendous amounts of value with these technologies.
Yeah, I think, Stacey, just to add on that, the most exciting thing for me about AI is that it allows a highly personalized experience across a massive scale, which we could have never done before. And so it allows every person to have a unique experience as they're going through things that is specific and catered to their data and who they are, which is cool. And that didn't exist at any other time. So this is exciting.
Yeah, exactly. The more I'm involved with this, the more I'm excited about the future, and I feel like, you know, this is actually going to be a really cool future. I teach a section of my analytics courses where I talk about AI with my students, because a lot of them are very, very depressed about this. They've been fed a very negative message of AI is coming for your jobs and it's going to destroy everything there is to love as a human, right? And only the top 1% are going to benefit from this, right? It's a very negative message. And I have spent a lot of time thinking about this. And one of the things I realized in the course of that contemplation was that, let's just say, here's how I put it to my students. Let's say we've got a greedy CEO who says, I just want to use no humans and I just want to use machines so I can make as much money as possible, right? If you put all of the humans out of work, okay, or you put a mass swaths of the economy out of work so that they don't have the ability to, they're not going to have income, they're not going to be able to buy stuff, you know. So it's in the corporations' favor, it's in broader society's favor that we have productive humans able to work, able to have meaning, able to have disposable income. That's how we produce, you know, have a productive society. So I've had this conversation even with ChatGPT about, like, how do you build that future where it's like productive, right? And even ChatGPT agrees with me. You can't automate the humans out of the economy, right? If you take the humans out of the economy, then you're dealing with societal collapse and civil war and mass strife and all this. And it like, our political leaders don't want that. Like, it's in nobody's benefit. It's not even in greedy corporate CEOs' benefit to take the humans out of the picture. You've got to build systems where the humans are still the center of the economy, right? That's where you unlock the biggest benefit, the biggest gains, the most economic growth, and the greatest amounts of like improvement in quality of life and GDP around the world. It's from putting humans at the center, and that's what we're doing right here, is figuring out ways of taking the human, putting them in control of stuff, giving them the tools they need to be in control of their data, so that they can achieve those improvements.
Thanks, Stacy. Fantastic. And I'll add with some closing remarks about building on what Daniel had to say about our notions of safe, responsible AI, ethical AI. There's tremendous work being done all over the world on what that means. Our thesis at AI MINDSystems Foundation is the achievement of all of those principles of AI are actually, and this is my opinion, not possible without the convergence with Web3 and blockchain technologies, as well as another family of technologies called privacy enhancing technologies. Those three things have to mash up and be designed and executed very elegantly and seamlessly. And the points of convergence, I call it Web3 dependent ethical AI. And that is the heart of our AI strategy, and the reason why there is such a robust and deep blockchain strategy to all that we're doing. And last but not least on that point, you can't separate the data economy from the AI economy. They are two sides of the same thing. And you can't separate data governance from AI governance, and data sovereignty from AI sovereignty, both of which are dependent on identity sovereignty for what it's worth, but that's a deep dive for another day. So the last but not least, if we want to make this market, this fair, financially just and inclusive market, not 20 years from now, but we want it to explode into existence, driving new capital inflows into old wicked problems, and into directly supporting individuals, families, and communities in some of their most significant needs and opportunities. We need an AI-assisted, market-driven function as well, just as exists in other markets today that are mature. The new data economy and AI economy that we are seeking to create has the same kinds of AI necessities for performance in that market, with a new class of guardrails, controls, safety measures, and active ethical risk management. So with that, I'd like to thank our esteemed panelists. It has been such a pleasure. Dr. Mannion, who joined us for the first half, thank you, Sean, Daniel, Stacy, Rebecca. This was a tremendous conversation. I'm so glad that we are going to be able to share it broadly. And last but not least, welcome aboard again to our newest colleague, Worldwide General Manager of Web3 Strategy and Ops, Rebecca. All right. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, Heather.
Until next time.
Thanks,
Goodbye.
everyone. Bye.
Stay well.